Okay, baby cakes, this is video number 3 of at least a 4-part video series. I'm going to make it a 4-part video series. Now, in video number 2, which I just got done making, in video number 1, I described how they can, how these filthy perpetrators in the government can begin to create destitution of a target. And then I briefly expanded on it in the second video. Then in the second video, I went on to talk about how a target individual can be used for non-consensual human experimentation. Hold on a second. Now let's get back to, you got to understand, in organized stalking expeditions, when they want to exploit a target, one target can be picked for multiple different crimes: racketeering, insurance fraud, human trafficking, and non-consensual human experimentation. Or they can be picked for two of these motivations, or just one, or all 4. Hold on. So, let's see what they can do to a target in order to neurally enslave them using brain entrainment techniques, okay? And how they can use certain technologies to influence the mind in reference to its brain states, in reference to even controlling the target individual's hands, arms, and speech. Alright, so in the first video and a little bit in the second video, I described about how they can covertly create destitution by blacklisting the target individual if they're not receiving any kind of government benefits like Social Security, disability. In other words, anybody that has to work for a living in order to survive, they can covertly blacklist that target individual in order to create destitution, which in itself creates circumstances which leaves the target individual vulnerable. I also had to briefly mention about how they can, because they will flag and tag a target for 5-6 years before they start the open gang stalking against the target. Okay? Pertaining to me, they infiltrated my life, I believe, at least back in 1987, 88. And there's an extreme likelihood that my ex-husband was involved in organized stalking. And the reason why I say that is because of the educated knowledge that I have derived from other target individuals in reference to how their spouses were discovered to have been involved in it, and because of the techniques that my ex-husband played towards me in our marriage. Some of the techniques that my ex-husband engaged in as I was married to him are literal organized stalking methods. And I met him back in 1982 and married him in 83, and we lived out here in San Diego. And what was happening between me and him when we were married out here, I'm not going to discuss that right now. But anyways, so basically what they'll do is, once the target individual is flagged and tagged, they will get to know the target individual, their finances, how they think, all of their relationships, how their family, what kind of relationship the target has with their family. Is it a good one, a strong one, a weak one, a strained relationship? Is it a estranged relationship? Is it a bad one? Okay, and they do this so they can begin to understand how to develop the specific terror campaigns against the target, how they can neurally influence the family members and or friends of a target to get them to walk away from a target, how they can even neurally influence the family members to violently attack the target or each other. That's right, baby cakes, you would not believe what I know. Now, let me just give you an illustration pertaining to these criminals. Do you know how rapists will take a person to an isolated environment to rape them because they can't have no witnesses, and that person who's being raped cannot have no immediate physical support in order to keep that crime from happening to them? Well, this is the same mental concept that the criminals have for the organized stalking, gang stalking target. They got to isolate the target from any kind of support that the target will run to once the open gang stalking starts towards them. Okay, and once they start, even before the open gang stalking starts towards them. In other words, when they start creating the bad financial destitution, they already have to make sure that they know that the target's got to have no type of support. Okay? So the family members and the siblings and the friends have already been at least possibly infiltrated. Family infiltration, friendship infiltration is all over the internet in reference to that being a method of gang stalking. Even, I mentioned a reporter that's being gang stalked in Minnesota. Her name is Jessica Miles. You can go to Google and type in Jessica Miles, KTPS, Minnesota reporter, gang stalking. And when you read her blog, you'll see that these perpetrators are whispering in the ears of her friends in order to try and motivate her friends to walk away from her. That's a direct illustration right there. See, because in order for them to attempt to start to exploit the target, they got to take away everything the target's got that keeps them independent. From the places that they can use to exploit the target, okay, and the relationships that they want to develop with the target for the brain entrainment and for the exploitation. So let me just fly right into this video pertaining to brain entrainment and neural enslavement for sexual enslavement. Okay, in organized stalking and gang stalking expeditions, what they'll do, I've already mentioned about how they infiltrate the families' lives, either remotely or directly, physically infiltrate them, or both. Okay, and friends and friends, their circle of friends as well. Now, they've already been blacklisted from employment, and the targeted individual is, let's just give this example that this is happening to a targeted individual that has nobody to help them, no family members to rely on, no friends, okay? So they already know that this is established pertaining to the target having no support. So they'll covertly create the unemployment by blacklisting them. They'll stage vehicle accidents so that target doesn't even have a car to sleep in. And then, as this is beginning to happen, they know the effects that the target will live in because they are managing and steering. They are creating, managing, okay, and steering these circumstances covertly. The targeted individual just believes they're having bad luck. Okay? They're just believing that they lost their job because of the reasons that the employer gave them. Okay, they believe that the car accident that destroyed their car, either after the unemployment was created or right before it, was the result of just a normal accident. Okay, and all of this is putting the targeted individual in a hyper-vigilant mindset because they're realizing everything they use in order to keep themselves alive and independent is being taken from them. Their car, their job, which causes them to lose their apartment, and then they don't even have a car to sleep in. They realize mentally that they don't have strong family ties, okay, and that they don't have any friends right now, or any friends that are good enough to possibly depend on. So they start getting hyperactive, hypervigilant, scared, okay. And this is then where the person who's managing all of this will covertly put people in that target individual's life to have these people stumble across them out and about in the community. The target individual, who might not even be a drinker, a person who drinks at all, might think to themselves, I'm going to go have a drink because this stress is overwhelming. Or they might even actually engage in what is called thought induction. This is the technology that John Hall talks about. He's all over the internet. You can go to YouTube and type in John Hall satellite terrorism, okay? And you'll literally hear him talk about how they placed a thought in his fiance's mind using the microwave hearing effect and voice morphing. Okay, of her voice, and then transmitted a thought into her audio cortex that was along the lines of, I'm going to go have a drink, and she did, and she went to a place to have a drink, and she ended up getting raped. Now, these people, John Hall calls them artificial thoughts. I think now he's using the term thought induction, and that's all over the internet. In fact, last night I just got done listening to a Paul McGuire show on Hagman and Hagman, where he's even talking about it now. I mean, this shit's getting out. Where he's talking about how they can place thoughts into a person's head. Okay? This is old technology, sweet peas. It's been around since at least the 60s. Okay? So when we research what I state, the microwave hearing effect and the voice morphing of a target individual's voice is the technology that they use to place a artificial thought into a person's head. They can also use the technology like remote neural monitoring that can stimulate the get up and go response. So if they're introducing a artificial thought an induced thought, I'm going to go have a drink, and then stimulate the get up and go response at the same time, the target just believes that they're just having their own original thought based on the stress that they're under. I'm going to go have a drink. And the target individual is aware that there's a couple bars in the neighborhood. They'll walk to that bar, and will the bartender then drug their drink, possibly set them up to be raped, and so the rape can be videotaped so it can be sold to pornography groups. Or will they, because they can induce this thought on more than one occasion, and the target will just think that they're just having this thought because of the stress they're under. Or when the target goes to the bar, they might place somebody in the bar to befriend them, and then they exchange phone numbers. And then once the target starts losing the apartment because they can't afford to pay rent no more, they might even induce the thought in the target's mind to call this person. Now this person will act like they're coming to their rescue. They'll even let them move in with them. Okay? And then the campaign continues. They can do a whole bunch of different things towards this target. But basically what it's done, this developed relationship was inserted for this target individual to experience and for it to be developed so they could use this person and or their family as a dependence mechanism in order to entrain dependency thought patterns. I can run to this person and or their family members who have now become my friends and depend on them when I need them. Okay, so at first the relationship will be real friendly, it'll be accommodating, they will help the target for a while, maybe even for a year or two, in order to entrain these neural pathways to run to them, while they're still being neurally manipulated with all the aforementioned technologies. Then they will start to look for reasons to walk away from the target. Now, in between these 2 years of cultivating this relationship in order to create and cultivate these neural entrained pathways of dependency, they are more than likely also inserting other people in the target individual's life. Okay, so they can be used also as another relationship for the target to run to. Now, why am I saying this? Because both of these parties are connected to the syndicate. The one that they initially depended on will start to be abusive. The target individual, okay, will start running from that one and go to the new ones that are forming. Now the target individual is put back in that fearful mindset. This relationship is deteriorating. I have no one, I have no car, I have no job. I better start depending on this one. They can also be neurally influenced to run to them as well, just like they were neurally influenced to depend on these people. Okay? Now the point I'm trying to make is this, is that these people coming to the rescue of the target is done for dependency thought patterns that they are intentionally neurally entraining. Okay? And if you got that coupled with the microwave hearing effect in reference to thought induction, then the target individual, okay, is being neurally entrained, and every neural pathway that has been entrained can be stimulated using remote neural monitoring, which means that everything that is in that neural pathway, the thought processes, the brain states, the emotional clusters, the beliefs that they can run to these people to depend on them, all of it has now been neurally entrained, and everything that is in that neurally entrained pathway can be stimulated using remote neural monitoring. So all those thinking, beliefs, hopes, and behaviors can be brought back into current consciousness in real time in order to be rethought out and reacted upon. Neural control. Okay? And you got to remember, these thought processes also have physical actions attached to them. Picking up the phone, calling the people that entrained them, running to them physically, literally running to them physically. Now, these people, after these neural pathways have been trained, they will then start to walk away and only give minimized periodic help. Then they will start introducing ideas in that person's head, because in between all this happening, they have influenced that person to go and get on Social Security disability. And they got it as a result of syndicated members being in Social Security that were waiting for them to go to them to apply, because it was all arranged. So now they got Social Security disability, which is a monthly check, and Medicare. Now, once the target individual's life is kept destroyed, this second group will start giving only minimal help. And then the target individual is now homeless and possibly living in a tent or sleeping out on the street. Now, and this is done so they can start then setting people up along that person's route to offer them sex for money. So that neural pathway can be entrained, so it can be stimulated. A neurally entrained neural pathway that's got thoughts, I can get money from this person if I have sex with them, the act of the sex, and if that is repeated once or twice or 3 times, that becomes a neural pathway. They identified and marked that neural pathway and stimulate it using remote neural monitoring, and even the cooperation of the first time of that person taking that phone number of that individual that offered them money for sex can actually have an induced thought attached to it. In other words, that person might not have never consciously made up their own mind about doing it the first time. The microwave hearing effect could have been used on them, along with stimulating the get up and go response to do it. This is then a neural pathway that becomes electronically formed using remote neural monitoring. Basically what they're doing is creating neural pathways, EEG signatures, and emotional clusters, and also manipulating the physiological system all at the same time for this brain entrainment and eventual brain stimulation. Neural enslavement for sexual enslavement, and I'm talking about for the worst of the worst that eventually come down the line. Now, they will also try to attempt to get the target individual addicted to drugs and do the same thing. Remember, in the second video, I talked about how you can go to Google and type in brainwave frequency list, and you'll run across enough of them to know that there are certain specific brain frequencies that are attached to alcoholism, drug addiction, post-traumatic stress, depression, panic disorders, anxiety disorders, you name it. Okay? What do you think remote neural monitoring is? They monitor you neurally remotely in order to neurally choreograph you, okay? And then you got all these other schemes that are designed and developed to brain entrain so they can identify and mark the resonance frequency of that specific neural pathway in order to stimulate it, to bring all the thinking and thoughts back into consciousness in real time to be reacted upon at will by the perpetrators from a remote distance. Brain entrainment for neural enslavement, for sexual enslavement, and for insurance fraud. The target individual is now homeless, periodically being sexually exploited. They still got to eat, and then these individuals will attempt to get them addicted to drugs. So those neural pathways can form, and so they can be used, to serve the drug dealers in the neighborhood, because they'll stimulate those neural pathways. They have to do with the cravings of the drug, and then they'll try and also use that newly formed relationship with the drug dealers to human traffic them for drugs. Do you see what I'm saying? Hold on. Now, they will also get along the target individual's route, and they know that the target individual's got to eat. The target individual is constantly being remotely neurally monitored, so they're already monitoring all the thought processes that the target's having in reference to them trying to survive this crime. What am I going to do today? What am I going to do now? How am I going to feed myself today? So the target individual will think to themselves, well, maybe I'll just, go and find some plastic bottles and return them and go get some ramen noodles. So they get up and they go and they walk to a store. They walk around the neighborhood looking for them, and guess who reappears along their path? Some of these are one of these individuals who supposedly came to their rescue before. Hold on. And they might help them out with the $5, $10 on that specific physical interaction. But the reason why they're reappearing along that person's route is because the remote neural monitor monitored their thoughts pertaining to how they were going to get up and go look for bottles to turn them in order to buy some spaghetti or whatever, And then these people intentionally, because you got to remember, targets are tracked in real time at all times, even tracking into the target individual's cell phone and using that as a GPS locator. So they then know where to place these people along that person's route when they were going to innocently look for bottles to return so they could feed themselves for that day. They will then place one of these individuals to act like that they're just in the same area that day, and or at the grocery store once the bottles have been collected, and they will say, God, I'm sorry to see that you're still going through this, and they might even offer them $1 or $2, or they might just lie and say, no, I'm sorry, I got no extra money on me today. But what they'll they'll more than likely give them $5 or $10, and they'll say, you know what, if you find yourself in this continued situation, I was talking to somebody that I know at the acquaintance level, and they said that they were going through a really bad situation, and they said that they called 911. Basically what they're doing is putting the idea in the target individual's head to call 911 to say they're suicidal. And if they say they're suicidal, then the EMS will come and pick them up and take them to the hospital, and then the hospital social services workers will give them all this different kind of help and resources that they can depend on. And the target individual will think to themselves, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to say that I'm suicidal when I'm not. Hold on. But what you got to remember here is that the target individual is intentionally kept in this extreme destitution of poverty. They're homeless. They're either sleeping on the street or they manage to buy a tent, okay? And if they're living in a state where there's snow in winter, what are they going to do? Now, once this idea has been put in their head, they go back to their homeless situation, okay? And the destitution of it, the poverty of it, the depression of it. And guess what they can then do? Use the microwave hearing effect and the voice morphing of the target's voice, and literally put an artificial thought into their head. I'm sick of this shit. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try. And they call, and then they excite the get up and go response, and they get up and they call 911. And they follow the protocol. They'll even wait, because they see that the target individual has called 911 through the hacking of their cell phone, at least. The syndicated EMS, fire department EMS, will come out and pick them up. And they'll say, well, what's wrong with you? That, at that point in time, where they can have an induced thought, I'm suicidal. They say, okay, well, we'll take care of you. They take them to a hospital. They're admitted into a psychiatric floor. And this is where the insurance fraud happens. You can go to Google right now and type in a gang stalking tech, everything you need to know. It is a manifesto of a manager of gang stalking crews. This manifesto talks about how targeted individuals are nothing but lab rats. This is where the human experimentation comes into play at, and this is where all the neural technologies come into play at. And the doctors in the manifesto are called the money bags. They were given the idea that they could call 911, so when they either had their own personal idea to call 911 based on the destitution, or when they induced the inducted thought into that person's mind using the microwave hearing effect and voice morphing, the target individual believes that it was just their own thought based on the extreme circumstance they're in. And then they excite the get up and go response, which is a electronic stimulation of an innate physiological function. It's a physiological signal that they can stimulate. It's called the get up and go response. You can go to Google and type in psychotronics and gang stalking, and you'll eventually run across a diagram of a human biology, a human body. And it shows all the different areas of the body that this technology can hit. And the get up and go response is listed at the bottom. Okay? So they got this technology that can neurally manipulate you and physiologically manipulate you, and also engage in thought induction. Go to Google and YouTube and type in John Hall satellite terrorism, and every single thing that you can bring up pertaining to what John Hall is talking about, pertaining to remote neural monitoring, gang stalking, and the microwave hearing effect, and voice morphing. Now, all of these technologies and then all these physical schemes are brought together to work in a cooperative relationship for the brain entrainment. Now, anything, they can put a thought in your head about anything and then stimulate the get up and go response, and you believe that it's just your own thought, because the thought they're inducing in your head is being placed in your head using the target's own voice morphing. So they just believe they're having an internal thought while they're in a dire circumstance. So they don't even have the conscious. When you're living in fear, your critical thinking is compromised. So if you're having this technology being used against you while you're in a paranoid, fearful mindset, then you're not even engaging in critical thinking to deduce, is this the best decision for me? And these organized stalking expeditions are also designed to keep you distracted from your own thoughts. That's right. This is where, in part, also the V2K can be perpetrated against an organized stalking target, where they're constantly bombarded from a distance with V2K transmissions that are intentionally designed to distract the target from their own critical thinking. That's right. That's where the gang stalking, like I'm sitting at this area right now, they literally put people up on the sidewalk to ride their bikes by and say gang stalking, to have me hear it, to distract me from my own thinking that I might be engaged in here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have accurately described to you brain entrainment in reference to organized gang stalking expeditions. Baiting the target to call 911 and say they're suicidal works in two ways for two functions. One is for the insurance fraud. So the Medicare and the state health insurance that the target has can be bilked out of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars because they repeat this through the brain stimulation, through the destitution and poverty, and possibly through the microwave hearing effect and the voice morphine. I'm going to make one more video. I'm going to make that right now. Please look in the description of this YouTube video. This is a 4-part video series. All of the YouTube titles pertaining to each of the videos of this 4-part video series will be eventually placed in the description of this YouTube video, or at least look for YouTube videos that were uploaded on the same date, or on a subsequential near date, and you'll be able to watch these videos even before they're titled. Thank you.